As previously mentioned, in the inaugural year of G.I. Joe, 1982 saw the launch of 11 carded figures, 4 vehicle drivers, and 1 mail-away special. Of those figures, only 2 members of the carded assortment were Cobra, a generic soldier and generic officer, with the mail-away being Cobra Commander himself. Back in the day, it was pretty common for toy companies to focus on the heroes as opposed to the villains. You look at Kenner Star Wars, for example. The majority of the figures in that assortment are part of the heroic Rebel Alliance, followed up by weirdo aliens, and then the Empire all the way in the back. And even though a majority of those Imperial figures were generic army builders, you'd be pretty lucky to have more than one Stormtrooper in your collection back in the day, and the same goes for Cobra. While Hasbro still favored the Joe team, by 1983 and 1984 we saw new additions to Cobra's ranks, but these weren't generic troopers. They were either high-ranking officers like Destro or the Baroness, or they were soldiers of fortune. Cobra has many unique mercenaries at their employ. The first merc was Major Blood, and honestly, nobody likes him.
He's an asshole.
There's also Zartan, who we've already discussed the many controversies and mysteries surrounding him, including his gorgeous red mane of hair. And while Zartan's cool, he's definitely outlandish compared to some of the other figures at the time. So let's get realistic. Let's get serious. Released in 1984, this is Firefly, Cobra's resident saboteur and demolitions expert. Firefly is potentially one of the most grounded and realistic Cobra operatives in the entire toy line. Firefly is decked out virtually head to toe in gray. He's got a slate gray camo jacket, a dark gray cable knit turtleneck sweater, dark gray boots, gray balaclava, gray backpack. This might as well be Zack Snyder's G.I. Joe Cobra is Gray edition.
People would think I was known for slow motion. I like slow motion. I don't really like slow motion that much.
The only pops of color on Firefly are his red Cobra logo, his brown eyes, and his green weapons. Despite the monotonous and drab color scheme, he has tons of amazing sculpted detail on him. There's a bandolier of grenades, pouches everywhere, little tools, a pistol on his thigh, and a knife on his wrist. All told, the combat gear and the cold color scheme make him look like an old-school dog of war. Someone who tipped the scales during the Cold War in places like Afghanistan and Southeast Asia. This guy is hardcore. When it comes to his instruments of destruction, Firefly includes an olive green submachine gun with a silencer and a stock. It looks pretty well detailed for the time. He also includes an itty-bitty walkie-talkie. Now, this walkie-talkie is the hardest part of the figure to find. Think about it. The smaller the accessory, the more likely it was going to be lost in the 40 years ahead of it. I mean, think about all the small accessories in G.I. Joe. Bipods, microphone clips, antennas, walkie-talkies, they get lost just as easily, and Firefly has another component that can get lost really fast. By this time, most G.I. Joe figures included a backpack, usually just a little hunk of sculpted plastic to put on their back. Nothing crazy, but nice nonetheless. However, Firefly's is a little more ambitious. Firefly's backpack has a small panel that can be removed to reveal tons of sculpted detail. Everything from demolition equipment to tools for a good old-fashioned B&E. So, all these factors combined with the small walkie-talkie and the little panel make for a very fantastic figure that can command a premium on the aftermarket. By no means is it as bad as the late-wave mail-aways like Neon Deep 6, but it's more than a little bit of a bite. Now, this isn't something I can prove, but I do feel like Firefly, at least in part, was inspired by Diabolik. Diabolik is a pretty old-school Italian neo-noir character from the Silver Age, and that character was inspired by Arsène Lupin. Diabolik started out as a really hardcore anti-hero, a master thief, a saboteur, an assassin with no compunction around killing. Diabolik isn't very well known in the United States outside of niche comic circles that like non-superhero fare. His biggest exposure here was actually thanks to the Beastie Boys. I knew somehow the Beastie Boys would work their way in here, I just didn't know how. Now, the characterization isn't the same necessarily, but visually they're really similar when you start looking at the art for Diabolik. you have the full balaclava that emphasizes specifically the very sharp eyebrows and piercing eyes. And a lot of Firefly's early artwork, especially on the file card and the Cobra Night Landing, emphasize thick eyebrows and piercing eyes. Again, correlation isn't causation, it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I wouldn't doubt it if a little bit of Diabolik art made its way into G.I. Joe's inspiration. After all, the series is heavily inspired by tons of awesome neo-noir, military, and pulp art from back in the day. Lots of awesome 60s and 70s stuff clearly inspired the visual language of G.I. Joe, a real American hero. There's one factor, though, that I think is crucial to Firefly's toy development, and that is Snake Eyes. Firefly feels very much like Cobra's answer to and parallel of the 1982-1983 release of Snake Eyes, and that even goes into the visual motifs of the figure as well. They're both decked out head to toe in stealth combat gear with their identities almost completely obfuscated. They both even include demolitions equipment, with Snake Eyes' awesome little man purse and Firefly's backpack full of demolition shit. It's just that Firefly is much more realized with advanced sculpted detail and paint applications. Just ignore the fact that he's not actually standing next to a Snake Eyes version 1.5, that's actually Stalker from the UK Action Force. Just imagine him all black instead of mostly black, and you'll get my point. I think Hasbro was trying to recapture the success they had with Snake Eyes with Firefly, and that even goes to the lore tidbits that you see on his file card. It keeps things pretty vague. Much like Snake Eyes, Firefly's name and birthplace are listed as classified. Both are military commandos that specialize in espionage and demolitions, but Firefly takes it one step further, with one of his military specialties listed as terrorist. You gotta be pretty hardcore to list terrorism on your resume. I do think Hasbro is trying to recapture the mystique of Snake Eyes, but it didn't really work. Obviously, Firefly is still extremely popular in the fandom today. He's bordering on Boba Fett levels of popular. But the issue is, Snake Eyes parallel became Storm Shadow, especially when he really delved into the whole Arashikage clan lore in the comic books. And while Firefly was involved with that later on, it really didn't translate to the original toy. The longer the G.I. Joe franchise goes on, the less Firefly is characterized as a stoic and cold commando with a literal mercenary edge, you know, a dark reflection of the original Snake Eyes. Instead, he's characterized as an unhinged bad actor, a loose cannon that has an affinity for explosions, more of a firebug than a firefly. The more crazed characterization can be seen in a lot more modern material, the comics, the cartoons, even in the toys a little bit. I mean, he's got a pretty wild look in his eyes in the modern Classified series. You can also see it a bit in the late great Ray Stevenson's interpretation of Firefly in G.I. Joe Retaliation, one of the few good parts of that movie. I think that's Hasbro just trying to zhuzh up Firefly, you know, give him a little more character for the modern age, but if you ask me, the charisma in the original 1984 release of Firefly comes from the fact that he is so straightforward and grounded. You take one look at this guy and you see, not only is he dangerous, but he is all business. He is a professional, and you even see that in his original file card as well. Cobra Commander has to wire funds to him through a Swiss bank account, and he has a no guarantees, no refunds policy. Firefly is an expert in his craft, and he'll get the job done no matter how mundane or how extreme his methods.